And just want to say thank you for coming to my CIP chat number 6. I'm getting tongue-tied around the Hexagon tool. And so this Hexagon tool is designed to really help districts look at the fit and feasibility of a program, a strategy, a practice you would like to implement. And it allows for discussion around that strategy. We'll stick with strategy for today, to really determine how well that's going to work for your district. And the conversation that develops with the use of this tool is pretty rich and pretty powerful for determining how to move forward with particular strategies. So the Hexagon tool can be used to look at a new strategy that you're thinking about implementing, and want to see if it will work, if it's even feasible to use that within your district. You can also look at strategies that you're already implementing. It can be a little awkward when you do that because you're like, well, we already picked it, so we've done some research on it, but it has some key questions that might have you look a little bit deeper to see how you're implementing that strategy to determine if it's still working. And it helps you anticipate those needs that you might have in order to support the implementation of this particular strategy if you determine that you want to move forward with it. So within the MICIP platform and the process, once a strategy is chosen from my strategy bank, the team needs to go through the Hexagon tool and score each indicator within the tool for that particular strategy before you can move forward. Those indicators are broken up into two kinds. There are program indicators, supports, evidence, and usability, which are questions that you ask when you're looking at that particular strategy. The district indicators, need, fit, and capacity, are the indicators that you address as a district and when you're determining whether that strategy is going to work for you or not. So I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, and she is going to go through each of those indicators and what those are.
Okay. There we go. All right, we are going to start by looking at the program indicators, which are actually green in the model there. And the first one we're looking at is evidence. So there's a few different questions for each of the indicators for your team to kind of think through around, in this case, around the program. So are there research data available around the program? What is the strength of that evidence? And then if there isn't research available, are there evaluation data available? So like pre and post test or any kind of testing results. Give you some information on the program. Usability is another program indicator. Is the program or practice clearly defined? Is each core feature well operationalized? So they kind of give some examples like, are staff going to know what to do and say? How do they prepare? And then is there a fidelity assessment that measures the practitioner behavior? Supports with the program. So is there a qualified expert that can help to implement it within the district? So that might be a program development developer, somebody who can consult with you guys. And then that question too, are there startup costs for implementation? So might there be cost in some consulting or any of those pieces? Are there curricula and other resources related to the program? And maybe some cost associated with that as well. And then is guidance on administrative policies and procedures available as a new program might affect policies and procedures. We switch over then to the focus on district indicators. So then looking more internally in the district here with need. So who is the identified population of concern? Is there evidence that the program or practice that you're looking at addresses those specific areas of need? And also providing data towards specific populations within your district. Looking at the fit. So how does the program or practice fit with priorities of the site? How does the program fit with family or community values for the site? And what other initiatives are currently being implemented will intersect with it. So if there's other initiatives, might they compete or contradict each other, or are they going to be complementary or supporting or align with what's already going on in the district? And then we also have capacity. So what are the staffing requirements for the program? What administrative policies or procedures might need to be adjusted if you implement this program? Is leadership knowledgeable about and in support of the program? And then do staff have the capacity to collect and use data to inform ongoing monitoring? So a lot of questions, and some of them go pretty in depth, but they're really going to generate that important conversation around the program and what the district has currently or is able to support. So I am going to actually switch over right now from our PowerPoint here a second. And while I do that, any questions so far about any of the indicators? So now on my screen, I am actually in the MICIP training site. I have gone through and for this purposes today, just put test in everything. But if you're at this point, you have already gone through all of the data discovery, you've created your measurable goal, and you are ready to dive into strategies here for today. Just to kind of move us through, I had PBIS as our strategy. So this is what the screen will look like once you get to that point. You've gone through the My Strategy Bank window, you've chosen PBIS, and they give you this plus sign here. And that actually opens up that window with the Hexagon tool. So there's kind of two ways that your district might be using the actual MICIP platform. If you're using the collaboration document and running everything outside of the platform first, you're probably going to have maybe that NERN document, which I'll open and show you in a minute, which has all of the details of the indicators, has those same questions we just went through on the slides, and your team would be able to rate it. So then when you're actually on this site, the actual MICIP platform, you might just be going in and literally clicking numbers because your team has already gone through it. If that's not the case and you are for some reason doing the Hexagon tool within the platform in real time with your group rather than a paper document, you can click on these triangles. It will open up those questions that we just had on each of those slides, but then it also gives you a link to discuss that 5-point scale a little more. So this link, when you open it, is actually that NERN document. So then your team would be able to go down to evidence, if that's where you are. And then it actually provides you that scale. So what does a 5 mean? What does a 4 mean? 3, 2, 1. And it does that for each and every indicator, because that rating scale is a little bit different for each indicator. It's indicator specific, basically. So once you have an understanding of the questions, you understand what ratings you're given, you can choose it on this screen, you save the response, and it records it here back on the big screen. In order to progress in the MICIP platform, you do have to have a rating for every single one of those components. And then it's going to give you an option. So you're going to either include this strategy in the implementation plan. So you've made a decision, which Laura's going to go in a little more depth in a minute about kind of how to make that decision. So if you wanted to include it, if you click that, then it's going to be, if you notice up here, it says in implementation plan. So you'd be able to move on. If for some reason you have the discussion and decide, nope, this is not the strategy for us, you remove it. You can close out of that strategy completely and start back over at add strategy.
So Stephanie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So if we're using this within the collaboration document, so each building is using it. So what I'm doing in Barron Center, and Susan knows because she's been working well with me, is I'm having each building do the collaboration document. And then at the end, I'll bring it all together into one document, and then I'm putting it in MICIP. Since it's, and I think a lot of people are on that page, since it's very clunky to get people in and roll out whatever. Yeah. So my question is, when I go into MICIP then, and I'm filling in this because I can't move on without it, am I then looking at all the buildings and taking like their average score on how they rated themselves? Or am I just going through and based on my experience, filling in the numbers, or doesn't it matter?
So I do think you're going to have some choice in that. My wondering is, are all the buildings rating the same strategy? So
yes,
if that's the case, then it does seem as though you could kind of average those out between the different buildings to see. I would assume that there'd be very similar ratings between the buildings, especially if that's a strategy that's going to be, you know, moved forward. So I think you could definitely average those out and then record that one response. Okay. And Laura and Susan, please add to or push back.
The only thing that I might add is if they're, because those are some of those indicators are district level indicators. If they're looking at them from the building level, then those would be based on their ability to do the work. You might want to reevaluate it from the district's ability to support the work at the building level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing so that Laura can start back up unless there's any other questions about the actual platform with Hexagon.
Okay, so once you have scored your strategy in all of those areas, it's time to take a look at that scoring and consider where you scored each of those indicators. So if something scored low, it doesn't mean that, oh, this isn't the right strategy. You might be able to take a look at the area in which you scored low and determine some action steps that actually could become activities within your plan in order to address those low scores. So for example, if taking Stephanie's example of PBIS, if you are low in capacity because you need to hire a coordinator or a coach, or there are some systems you need to put into place first, It doesn't mean that you can't use PBIS as a strategy. You just may want to include some of those items that are missing as activities within your plan to move forward. So there is no scale for districts to weigh their options against. You know, if you have this score, then maybe you should or shouldn't include it. Is really in that conversation on whether you can overcome some of those barriers or not. Stephanie talked about some of those resources like the NERN guide that is linked directly within the MICIP platform, but that is just a really great guide to use. Also in the MICIP process guide, they address this beginning on page 41. It is mostly an overview of how to use the Hexagon tool, but not necessarily the in-depth that you would get from this document here. In addition, Eaton Risa has put together a template that is a scaled down version of the NERN document. I think a happy medium is somewhere in between, and we've been talking about this as a team, but it really goes through, and at a glance, you can document what your scores were, what some of your notes were, and then allows you to consider some questions you might answer in order to action plan around some of those low areas. So again, just another resource that's not required, but may help organize your thinking around the Hexagon tool. And as always, the three of us are here to support you with it, no matter what you run into with it. And before we move on for today, just some tips and tricks that we've been finding as we work through the platform. I was working with a district last week or the week before, and we were copying from the collaboration document and pasting into the MICIP platform. And there's just a little bug. So we were copy paste, and we get to the bottom and it wouldn't let us save or move forward. Through trial and error, we figured out that you have to actually enter something physically into those text boxes within the platform for it to read what you pasted. So for example, I could copy and paste something in there, and then I have to hit the space bar or enter for it to read what I copied and pasted in there. So one of those things that we just figured out when it presented itself, and we found the workaround. We contacted MDE about it. We can't replicate the issue in the training site, but they have been informed that in a district site, this is what happened. So just to save yourself the frustration, we thought we would share. And then finally, when you determine your measurable goal, you set your interim and end target measures, and those need to match a data source that you have in your data story. If for some reason through your root cause, you've determined that maybe you need to create a survey to collect some data that would be valuable to determine if you're making progress towards your goal or not. And so, Jen, I'm going to use your example with equity. You may want to have a staff survey, but it hasn't been created yet. So you don't have any baseline data, but you're not going to create it between now and June 30th because it's not the right time to do it. However, you want to use it as an interim target, some progress on that, because you know you'll put it together in the fall and you're going to start measuring with that survey. You can create just a document that states survey will be created fall 2020 and administered by this date. Upload that into your data story, and you can connect your target back to that document for now until you have the data to fit what that measure is going to be. So just a workaround, because we don't always have those things on hand, sometimes our root cause, we figure out we're missing something, and it becomes part of our action plan to begin to develop them. So just a few things to keep in mind as you're working through MICIP. In addition, we have some technical assistance dates coming up. They're kind of like open office hours. We have a Zoom link. It's the same link for every session. We're going to have them throughout June, but just to put the first few dates out there for you, you can drop in any time that we have scheduled. If you have questions, if you need support, whatever it is that you need, let us know. And we will be sending those out in a separate invitation, probably on a regular basis now. All right. Any questions that you have about specifically the Hexagon tool?
So here's my question. It kind of goes back to my activity strategy question.
Mhm.
I understand the utility of the Hex tool and how beneficial that tool will be for our teams to use. When I think about the example I shared about equity being, so we know that we're going to focus on equity as a district. So that's our overarching strategy. Under that strategy, I then have all of those different activities. So in my mind, equity in and of itself isn't a strategy, right? Like I feel like I should be doing the Hex tool on those activities that I want to implement. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So you're looking at a systems level issue,
Yep.
and you are, I'd have to find some wording for that,
Yeah.
what that strategy would be.
So the way
I'd have to think about that.
here's my strategy, Laura. As a district, we want to explore the definitions, structures, and policy of equity as they relate to the educational system in our district. Using the equity lens, we want to create supports for all of our learning levels, elementary through high school. Basically, I modified some things, but that's the example that MICIP provides for equity.
Mm-hmm.
But nowhere in there does it speak to specific strategies that I would apply the Hex tool to. But down below, there are very specific things like creating a district-wide equity team. Okay, that's an activity connected to the equity strategy that I could take the Hex tool to and evaluate that.
So might some of your language be, you're really creating maybe like a multi-tier system of support around equity. So in order to create that, you'll want to look at, those parts of the Hexagon tool. Do you have the capacity to create such a system? Does it fit? So maybe that's just my first blush.
Nope, Susan, that's perfect. That helps me to reframe it.
Okay.
Just by adding that word system.
Okay. Okay.
Because then I can take the Hex tool and that.
Okay.
Bingo. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, team. We'll figure this all out together.
Yeah, exactly. As long as we're not afraid to make mistakes, right? And I love the fact that we can just brainstorm and make it better and make it better and make it better.
That's right.